Phoena's Quest, Book 1, First Spark, by Chrissy Garwood. Chapter 3, Before Dinner. After lunch, Matron sent Phoena on an errand that took most of the afternoon. The isolation gave her plenty of time to consider her situation. Yet no explanation or solution presented itself. Dinner would be served in an hour. Helga had summoned her to the dining hall. They were both rostered to prepare the tables for dinner. However, almost immediately after their arrival, Helga disappeared. This was not an unusual occurrence. Phoena was accustomed to doing more than her share of the work. She prowled around the room, making a final check that all the table settings were complete. The door reserved for the masters burst open. Matron and Headmaster Pepperbury entered. They were deep in conversation. Phoena continued her task, but she could not avoid hearing every word. Her head spun. How was it possible that they didn't see her? Trouble, Matron said. I always knew there would be no other outcome. It was inevitable this girl would attract the wrong kind of attention. But we have the strongest wards in place, Headmaster Pepperbury replied. They have always kept her talents hidden. Until today I would have agreed with you, but Carillion has noticed her. Phoena became a silent statue at the mention of that young man's name. Matron continued, and from what I saw at luncheon, he's not the only one. She was in the dining hall, serving at Carillion's table. Was that wise? Matron frowned at him, and then deliberately looked at Phoena. The girl's heart leapt. Matron's eyes flashed a silent warning for her to keep still. Matron pursed her lips. Headmaster, I had hoped you would recognise the problem for yourself. Perhaps the girl's ability to make herself invisible is more effective than I realised. I brought you here to confirm my suspicions. It was Headmaster Pepperbury's turn to frown. He scanned the room. Phoena trembled, but his eyes passed over her without acknowledgement. He shook his head. You're always telling me that I can't see the problems immediately in front of me. What would you have me do? The girl is blind to the magical influences that surround her. I want permission to unveil her mind. Are you certain there's no other way? Carillion has already tried a few charms, and she has deflected them without effort. Can you predict the outcome if he discovers her real potential? Is it really that serious? The Emberite ambassador's son is also involved, Matron said. Headmaster Pepperbury muttered something about an international incident and turned towards the door. He took 3 long strides before he spun back towards Matron. Only her guardian can give the permission you seek. I forbid you to take any action until I have appraised him of the situation. Without another word, the headmaster hurried from the room. Matron watched him leave. She nodded to Phoena before following him through the same door. When she was alone, the teenager dropped to her knees. She held her pounding head in her hands. The words she had overheard made no sense. A whirlwind of possibilities threatened her sanity. Matron had never hinted that she knew anything about Phoena's origins. What was she to make of the headmaster's inability to see her? And what of this talk about magical influences? There was no possibility that Phoena had any magical powers. Indeed, everyone knew that Phoena was talentless. She was one of the few in this household who could not even discern magical use. She had only recently avoided disaster. A group of mischievous first years had directed a spell at her on the stairs. Afterwards they confessed to practising some basic enchantments. They denied using anything powerful enough to throw her over the balcony. Witnesses said she flipped in the air as if she was flying. All she could remember was a loud bang. Then she was clinging to the banister railing, with her feet dangling over the open stairwell. A passing footman had rescued her. Helga said she was unbelievably lucky. Either that, or these students were lulling her into a false sense of security. Her friend warned her to watch out for the next trap. What would Helga make of this mysterious guardian who was to be consulted about her fate? Phoena shuddered. Her nights were often disturbed by strange dreams. Now her imagination ran riot. At the height of this insanity, she heard whirring dragon wings. The delusion was convincing. She shook her head. A daytime fantasy was worse than any nightmare. Phoena refused to open her eyes. She ignored the persistent chirping of the creature. Tiny talons dug into her shoulder. The imaginary dragonette even butted its head against her chin. "Go away," she told it. "Torment someone else." The dragonette hissed at her and went. 15 minutes before dinner, footmen entered the dining hall. They came to draw the heavy curtains and light the candles. One of them threw her a curious glance as she struggled to her feet. She hurried from the room before anyone demanded an explanation. Weaving through the gathered crowd of servants, Phoena ran to the washroom. She stayed longer than she should. Finally, she splashed cool water over her face. She checked her reflection in the small wall mirror. She saw nothing to commend her. That nose was too long. Those dishwater grey eyes too wide apart. A wayward strand of brown hair was loose again. She tucked it into the knot at the nape of her neck. From the cupboard she selected a pleated white headband and shoved it on. The door flew open. Helga stormed into the washroom. "Matron is asking after you. The soup course is about to be served." Phoena smoothed her apron with her hands. She followed Helga to the line of assembled trolleys. "Table 2, Helga said as she took her place. "It was costly persuading the other team to swap, so if you do anything to disappoint me, I'll never speak to you again." Dear listening reader, I hope you have enjoyed this latest chapter from the first book in the Phoena's Quest trilogy. This is a beta copy, and the text may change between now and the official publication date. If you have any questions or suggestions that would make this chapter easier to read, please let me know. In return for your help, I will include your name in the acknowledgements as part of the reader team. Chrissy.